dispelled, Lucci loses almost all of his traction when a Sabo resolves on the other side of the field.
But like
And
you, oh sorry,
fair enough.
Go ahead. I was going to say, like you mentioned, Chris, this is a matchup that's tried and true. People have been playing it for format after format now, ever since pretty much the Starter X and Set 7 came out together. So, you know, while we have seen bad matchups during this tournament, as Michael showed us back in that matchup against Teach, even if it's a bad matchup, there's always a game plan you can use to take it down, and these two players definitely could have those game plans in their back pockets.
I do definitely agree. Like, the player skill is going to factor into this quite a bit. If you're Caden, you just have to hope that 2 Sabos max are seen from Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, like I said earlier, we said almost the same thing about Michael's match going into Teach, right? Where we said, oh, well, the black-yellow Luffy is a little bit unfavored. You know, well, now looking at the opposite side, right? If the Rob Lucci is a little bit maybe down in the stats, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a sure thing, right? It's all up to the player's brains. It's all up to the heart of the cards, if you will, too. It's all up to what we're going to see in these next 2, maybe 3 games.
Alrighty, and here we go. I believe that there's chosen that Michael went first here. It's his second turn. He swung 8K into Lucci, and now Caden's going to begin his second turn with 4 life and 4 Dawn. Let's see what happens. And there we see the establishment of the Rob Lucci just as a threat here. No effect, just a 4K 6. Sorry, a 4-drop 6K.
What do you think about that? I mean, we mentioned about how Rob Lucci kind of needs to play the removal out a little bit differently in this matchup too, but I kind of like just throwing a 6K body out there to worry about. How about you?
Realistically, you have to get traction on the board, especially seeing is that we have a couple of more turns before Michael is going to start doing the dance of establishing a board and then just playing a Sabo around it. And at that point, your Lucci is just going to be a vanilla body regardless, so you might as well put him out here to start pressing the hand. It's just, you just need to get that traction on board.
And a big notable thing, too, is that in this matchup specifically, it's kind of the opposite as we saw for Teach. You know, there's no natural clock on this game that either play needs to put on. We don't need to see, like, attack with leader every single turn. We can actually maybe take it a bit more slow as Caden. Just establish a threat, not build up our trash like we normally do with Lucci. All that matters is eventually we can stymie our opponent from going for those big wombo combo plays of Gecko Moria plus, like, double baby into, like, 5 drops. That'll be, like, the scariest thing, those looping of Sabos, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. The dream scenario for BY Luffy, at least. But as far as that Rob Lucci goes, too, I mean, you can always bring it back later.
Yes.
This deck brings Lucci's back pretty frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And the boards will be getting absolutely huge. Both decks actually being able to employ Gecko Moria. The Kuzan being on the field next to the Garp, I mean, Kuzan is going to be able to bring pretty much anything that Caden plays down to an easily removable cost. So the setup's looking pretty good for Michael right here.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, in this matchup, Kuzan's kind of hard to keep in play. So I imagine Caden, once it comes down, he's like, oh, I got to get rid of that. Oh, I got to get rid of that. There's so many threats turn for turn that Michael could be playing.
I mean, that's how Rob Lucci's thrive, right? Is, I have an answer for that. I have an answer for that.
All right, we got the Kaku coming down.
The 5-drop Kaku from set 3. Not a tech we saw a lot of during, you know, I would say Lucci's heyday of set 7 and set 8, but it's a really awesome inclusion to see here. I imagine it's a really awesome thing to use in the Dofi matchup specifically because you can use Lucci effect plus just Kaku to get rid of a 4-cost card, like we saw here with this Kuzan.
That's exactly right. And I mean, that's the fate of most Kuzans, right? They hit the board, they draw you a card. If you get real lucky, they'd live to the next turn to get to minus cost something.
I mean, 100%. And if they don't live, you got the draw, and you played out your turn, and it was a lightning rod for removal. But if they do live, you're going plus ultra. Like, it's very strong.
That's why it's such a great card.
Yeah, like in terms of pressure right now, Caden has 2 5-drop 6Ks to Michael's like no board. Michael needs to like go super minus here if he wants to get down to 0 life by the time he gets to 10 Dawn. So I think Caden's kind of in a really interesting position where, yes, there's no clock on this game, but he's representing a lot of pressure and advantage.
And we can see right there, this is exactly what I was speaking about before. Most of these times, you only have a singular turn where Lucci can interact with Michael's board before the Sabo comes and clinches it. If that Kuzan wasn't destroyed last turn, it would have been untouchable this coming turn, and that would have been a problem. But now he's got the Sabo in line, not really protecting too much, but the ability to sculpt the hand is very, very important, setting up the trash for his future plays with the brothers and whatnot, and he's going to be just putting on the pressure. Like, Lucci is a pretty straightforward deck, and if you start cutting off its ability to remove your board, you will overwhelm it.
So there we see Caden taking that card from that 7K attack. Didn't want to sacrifice 2 cards there. He wants to maintain as much advantage as possible, I would assume.
I'm curious how many BY Luffy's Caden might have run into on the way to the finals. We know there was a good amount of them in the tournament overall. We only had, I believe it was 4 in the top 32, but still, out of the huge number of players we had, you'd have to imagine he'd face maybe 1 or 2. It's not outside the realm of possibility. No doubt a lot of Dofi matchups, right? But he's here because he can kind of play any matchup, I would imagine. So
yeah, Lucci's always been like one of those decks to me where even if you have like a bad matchup classically like BY Luffy, you can always tech your deck out. There's always
Sure.
sort of options for you to sort of, if you draw them at the right time or get the right curve of like your Sabo into Jack, into Moria, into
Speaking of
Luffy.
Jack.
There it is. So, yeah, I feel like Lucci was like a really interesting deck that players who took the time to prepare for it for this event could take on anything. But, yeah, you're probably right. Caden wasn't planning for BY Luffy, but he's like, if it comes around, I know how to play against that matchup already, so I should be fine.
Yeah, and honestly, Jack represents some kind of like bigger bodies too that you have to kind of worry about. I mean, not only do they have a great ability, but they can start, swinging potentially at some point too.
And there we see another tech card from Caden here that might be a new update for the Set 9 meta in that 2-drop Uta that I believe came out in the starter deck or one of the other newer sets.
The black starter deck?
Yeah. It's basically going to be like, I believe, a way for you to get more minus cost turn after turn.
That's the idea. I mean, it can't be KO'd by leaders, which is kind of nice, but you can, continue to give -2 cost to something on the other side. So if it sticks around, it can be annoying, but in the trash for now.
Yep, and so we've got this Kuzan into a Sabo. This is just an incredible amount of advantage. We're seeing 3 cards deeper into our deck. We're discarding the blanks that we don't need, and this entire board is once again blanketed. And this is exactly the type of momentum I was talking about. He is starting to be able to build a board and immediately protect it in the same turn. And this following turn, Lucci's best plays are going to be able to turn things sideways, attempt to build a board and turn things sideways. He will not be able to reduce it, and that's where Lucci's strength comes into play, where everything has doesn't have the ability to attack when it comes into play or the turn it comes into play. Lucci being able to equalize the board, take it away from you right after you've played it, is its strength, and it's not able to do that here. So it's got to be more of kind of like a race of pressure, and when it comes to that, I'm not saying it's sealed, but I think that Black Yellow Luffy is like the king of pressure in this matchup. Like,
certainly showing us right now, decides to throw out the counter with the Rebecca, it looks like. But I guess the question is, can we get to the point in the game where, the board is stable, but also you start to recur things with the Gecko Moria, right? Start to bring back some of the removal here and there. You can't really say you can ever wait out the Sabos on Black Yellow Luffy because they just keep coming back. But if you can maybe find a late game window where they falter on, finding the boys or something like that, you just got to wait. I feel like you just got to try to find that window.
Well, I think one of the things that is kind of an issue for Caden here is that while, yes, it's not like Black Yellow Luffy is packing the same amounts of removal as Lucci, it still does have removal.
Sure.
So while Caden's not able to interact with Michael's field, Michael is very much so able to interact with Caden's field. And that's going to make it harder. Even when you establish a board with Gecko, your blockers aren't going to be staying blockers because you can't Gecko and Sabo in the same turn. If he's running it, there's a lot of... This is going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, I think we're just cycling here with Jack's ability just to get the draw one, trash one, fill up that trash here, and get sort of all the pieces we need in hand. I always think of Lucci classically as like, yes, it's more of a pseudo-control deck that tries to like gain advantage and control the board, but it's kind of also a combo deck where you need those pieces like Rebecca, Spandan, Lucci, or Moria, Rebecca, Spandan, Lucci in the trash in your hand to really get the impressive combos off. And speaking of one of them, here we see the Gecko Moria, the king of black, coming down for 8. Going to be recycling some cool cards. I believe we have Uda's a cool target here. We have the Rebecca in there that we trashed, I believe, last turn using Jack's effect.
Yeah, I think you probably named some of the 2 top targets here.
I mean, you can
wants to go with.
Yes, you have to put the Rebecca on board because, yes, while Michael can get rid of it, you still have to force him to have it. And then if he doesn't have it, you do have a little bit of extra defense at your disposal. But Rebecca is kind of just... It's not the most protected right now.
Yeah, well, she brings the Lucci into hand, so Caden has that at his fingertips again, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, playing out a card just to replace something that's already in your board felt a little minus. Just bringing back a card from your hand, from your trash back to your hand just seems good enough.
It'll have to be. It'll have to be right now. And it looks like we're doing some counting. What are the attacks going to be coming in from Michael this turn?
Yeah, he should be at 10 Dawn right now because he was going first, and this is his 6th turn of the game, I believe.
Oh, all right. Yeah, so that's the other thing we haven't really talked a lot about, too, is that one thing you can try to do is sort of stall out the black-yellow Luffy a little bit, but that's why the Flampeys are in the deck, right? That's where when you run into the situation, you're like, all right, well, I'm going to just grab some of my own life then.
Yeah, the thing.
I think he realized. Hold up.
So he has to pay the cost for the
Yes.
flambe. He has to replace the 5th thing that was already in his play, and now he resolves the on-play effect. Michael was just getting a little too excited.
Get a little bit ahead of himself. That happens. You know, it's been a long day of games. I mean, man, we've said it before, but these tournaments are not just a test of skill; they're a test of stamina as well. To
And
keep the mental fortitude for the entire weekend is rough. It's tough.
yes, and Michael is no stranger to being on stream. He's no stranger to the top cut, but this is the national championship, so anybody would maybe get a little jitters.
Yeah, it is worth noting that both Michael and one of our Digimon finalists, Moment, are sort of content creators and known members of the community. Not only do they support this game, but they grind as hard as anybody else to be some of the best players in the world, and it shows.
Oh yeah.
So there we see Hiyori coming down. Going to go ahead and stack the life here. I don't think you need to reveal what card you put in, but maybe he wants to. He showed it to us at least, which I like.
That's all right. We got to see it, I guess. But yeah, taking a total of 3 life into hand, and then the Hiyori puts 1 back here. And now we're going to use the little boy Luffy to bring out the Rocket Luffy, I believe that is.
Like Chris said, that Rebecca is
Yeah,
not protected, so we can get rid of it now using Rocket Luffy's effect. Oh, well, we have the cost reduction from the Kuzan as well.
Yeah, and it's not every day you see a Rocket Luffy take out a Gecko Moria, but if the Kuzan's on the board, that is on the menu.
I mean, Kuzan, he's cold, he's crisp, he's collected, and he makes anything possible. Like, that is,
There you go.
he is the enabler.
I will say, though, unless we have a baby Sabo in hand, we're not going to be able to start Sabo looping, and it is possible that Caden could wombo get rid of all the cards that Michael has established in play already.
Well, that's that window that we were talking about, right? Is if you can find that window where the Sabo can't roll, and he's trying to search for it right now, we can see. Well, there's one right there, but if you do get to a situation where you can't do it, then again, that window opens up, maybe a chance for Caden to strike, but not this time as the 3rd Sabo hits the board.
Yep, the looping has begun, as they say, for these boys.
Boys to men.
So, yes, we've got the 3rd Sabo online. He's got all the pieces he needs. If I'm not mistaken, I saw a Gecko in the grip, and the grip is fat. This is a pretty commanding position for Michael. He's comfortable. He knows the matchup. It's a favorable matchup for him. Yep, that is definitely a Gecko, maybe even 2 Geckos. Yeah, this is the place he wants to be.
Yeah, on turn 10, even though we started the turn with 10 life, we were still able to do the optimal 2-baby 9,000-liter combo, which people only think can happen if you draw Gecko Moria on turn 10. But nope, you can do that even from 3 life if you needed to. But something to note here is that Caden does have 4 attackers in play, and as we mentioned, he has no way to really KO anything on Michael's board, so it's kind of not worth for him to play anything from his hand that would do so. It's probably just worth for him to try to control the board using his attacks and then maybe deal as much damage as he can and put pressure on, because Michael did have to go a little minus during his turn to kind of achieve that combo. That's where those flampeys kind of come in, to let you recycle the cards you're inevitably sacrificing just to take your own life.
Yeah, so a 6K swing at the Kuzan, it looked like he directed that towards, and then minus cost, I believe, was on the Sabo. It ran away from the dice.
Yeah, he's like, you can't KO him anyway, so I'm just going to put him over here.
I run away from the dice. It's okay. Yep, there you go. There's no escape. The dice will follow.
I think Michael's just debating how important this Kuzan is turn after turn. Like we said, the black-yellow Luffy deck does not have the best way to remove things, but that Kuzan can enable plenty of ways to get rid of problematic cards.
Correct.
I guess you're okay. You're okay letting it go. If you're Michael.
A card that used to be played in a lot of Lucci decks to kind of deal with this matchup was the 6-drop Brook. I wonder if Caden kept those in his list for this OPO9 tournament, or if he teched out more against the Dofis, the Purple Luffys, and the other decks of the world.
That's a good question, but generally that Brook, you want to see it like on curve, because at this point, this Brook is a drop in a bucket.
Yeah, the best thing it does is put more Sabos in Luffy's trash that he can recycle during his turn, right?
And this is everything's getting donned up. He's swinging in pretty heavily, but this is...
I mean, it'll demand either blocks or cards. I think it's all good, but as we know, Michael has a lot of Morias in his hand, so he can build his board right back up, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, what else can you do, right? You have to tax the resources in some way, and this is just sort of like Caden's only path to do that right at the moment.
But Black does not play the same resource game everybody else does because of a certain particularly powerful 8-drop card.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. Yeah. And we know that Michael has a couple Gecko Morias in the hand, too. We saw that a little bit ago. And question is, Are they all going to come out? And there's another one. As you would expect, going to bring in the Luffy and the Sabo, of course, and this is what we're talking about earlier, just kind of able to take that stuff out of the trash, throw it back in there when you need it, create that blanket resisting KO effect from the Sabo, get another blocker on board. It's the bread and butter of what makes this deck so powerful.
Yep, being a 9-life leader and always having 1 life, as well as maybe 2 blockers that can't be KO'd by your opponent's card effects, it feels like an immovable wall that almost no deck can deal with turn after turn after game after game.
Very true. So still playing out through that turn, and yeah, there's the Sabo coming in, like of course it would, and that I believe is going to bring Luffy up to a 9K for the rest of the turn, or for the rest of his opponent's turn as well. And you know, it's just kind of the double whammy, right, of being able to play the protection from the Sabo, the blocking of the Sabo, turning your leader into a 9K. That just creates this wall that's very, very difficult to overcome for a lot of decks.
And then we see the 11K attack into the leader Lucci.
Yeah.
Caden still has his board. Like he says, we have to commit a lot of Dawn to make these cards actually meaningful attackers. But again, what else are you going to use that Dawn for? KO effects? They don't work right now. This is where, like, maybe if you did like some cost reduction plus having the Brook in your deck, you could get rid of the Moria, which could be a really nice way to sort of get the tempo still in your favor. But here we're going to commit the 1 Dawn to Jack and swing 9K into 9K.
All right, just trying to get a little bit more out of the hand of Michael. That or get rid of a blocker, but I think you're going to counter out on this one. Yeah, just tosses the Garp in the discard.
Now, this is particularly rough because, you know, Caden has to go for it. It's game 1. He has to go for it. But from the bird's eye view that everybody's seeing on stream and what we see, we know that this same field will return.
Ooh, but there we see the 9-drop Kaido. This card could be very useful for this matchup because it trashes, I believe, does not KO, so I believe it gets around the effect of Sabo, and it also gets rid of a card out of Michael's hand, and as we know, Michael's kind of already gone minus throughout these turns here going for his bigger combos because Caden did such a great job of starving his life at the beginning of this game.
Right, we talked about the Brook earlier, but that's not the only card that can get you out of these situations. That Kaido has been lurking in a lot of Lucci lists for a long time, and here it appears again. That's not necessarily going to stop Michael from doing the same old shenanigans. Luffy, and you'd have to imagine the Sabo is going to be coming back soon too.
I know Lucci is an animal in terms of power, but also with all these Animal Kingdom cards, he's an animal in spirit.
Like, see, the thing is, like, Kaido is very, very good, and the best part about it is that Kaido will be able to push some pressure without having to use Dawn, because playing Kaido essentially just meant that nothing else on the board could actually swing.
Yeah.
But now we've got another Sabo. We're going in again to make sure the hand is as best as possible it can be. We saw Hiyori in there. You know, he's got some combo power or some counter power, and he's going to be able to keep that. But, I mean, we really have to see what Caden's about to play next because he's trying to dig himself out of a hole. That's his purpose right now.
I think he's doing about as good a job as you possibly could, you know, with this Lucci deck. I mean, so far everything's been played out pretty well. He's been able to stall a little bit in the early game, make Michael be the one to take away some of those life cards with the Flampe's, and then kind of save up the resources, get ready for these turns to try to remove some of the bigger threats. And will it be enough? You know, that remains to be seen. But I think he's put himself in about as good a position as you could, given the situation.
Right.
This is about to be a good turn.
Oh, yeah. And you can see the mentality he had playing that 4-drop Rob Lucci on turn 2 with no effect, just building up this wall of threats that will threaten Michael's hand and life total no matter how many blockers he has. Because he has, in theory, 5 attacks this turn that could all threaten his leader and either force cards out.
Right? I mean,
really strong.
Yeah, you have 3 Sabos out, but if all of them have to be used for blockers in one turn, you just can't bring them back. You start to go Sabo negative turn by turn.
Sabo negative.
And there we see the Lucci milling 2. I'm going to be marking the Mikeko Moria with a -1 cost.
What's the plan here?
For a second, I saw his hand wave. I was like, did he just pass? What are we doing here? What the heck?
I mean, the cool part here for me is that we have the ability to actually press on Luffy just a little bit. I mean, we've got 1 Sabo out of the way. We still have most of our Dawn up to spin, and we may actually have a turn where we get to break the board. Now, it's going to be a turn right after that. The Gecko Moria brings the board back, but hopefully for Caden, you see Gecko Moria after 3 of them, and then, you know, you get your little breath of respite. But Michael's coming at this game pretty strong.
I like the idea of like going for something like 9 or 11 and 11 for these next 2 attacks, because if you kind of ramp up, you force more cards out of his hand, or you kind of force Michael to use his last blocker that he has in play.
Yeah, let's Looks like 9 is going to maybe be the order of business. He's got 3 down under the Rob Lucci right now. And, ooh, jumping up to 11. All right.
Yeah, he really wants to either get him down to 0 life or get rid of this last blocker.
Yeah, I think he really wanted to see the Sabo hit the trash there.
He needs to line it up. Like, he's trying to line up the perfect, like, in shot, and that's what you need to do. When you can't get rid of the board by effect, you need to get rid of it by pressure, and he is bringing pressure.
Yep, this Rebecca has not played to the board once this entire game. It's just about adding cards back to Caden's hand, making sure he has as many resources as possible. I think he's up to like 11 cards in hand or something, if I was keeping count correctly, to Michael's 5.
It's been a decent hand size. Grabbing a 2K there, I believe, in the Spandine.
Oh, we are going to choose to play it out. I mean, I guess, what this will allow him to do is, I believe, just basically put cards back to the bottom of his deck and recycle his resources.
I like this. Okay. Yeah, so, putting some pressure on, but also saying, hey, I still got to play the long game here.
Yeah, this is like what a really cool thing you can do with the Rob Lucci deck in the late game is essentially just loop your most powerful cards. So if you do have a longer matchup or a longer game like this one, or Vegapunk, as you and I are fond of playing, this is what their end boards can look like. They will never deck out. They'll always have the most powerful cards they need to kind of loop you into a game state where you lose.
Well, I don't even know about late game. Bandai going crazy the moment I can play Gecko. Like, this is, it's crazy the amount of... Oh,
that's a
no
little bit
search
painful.
on the Spandine. Like I said, he's being a bit of an animal this game. Not enough CP9 cards, I think, to get the full value.
That's always the risk with this deck, is that like you just aren't running as much CP9 as you used to, and so you do get that whiff every once in a while.
So there we see the attack with Rocket Luffy forcing out the Rebecca because otherwise it would get KO'd anyway. And there we see the KO of it to get rid of the Spandine and draw a card for Michael there.
All right. Well,
that was not what you wanted to see come off the top of your deck for that Spandom search. That was rough.
We are attacking the leader here with the Gecko Moria. Going to be going for 2 2Ks here from Caden and a 1K in the Brook here to stop that.
Yep, got to try to live through this.
And here's Gecko Moria number 3 coming down from Michael. Going to do the same song and dance as we did before. We get the 2 names of Luffy and Sabo. We use the Luffy, bring out the Rocket Luffy, and then we go back for our 2 in the life.
And after all of that, that's what happens, right? Is you get another Gecko Moria out. You're not set back to square one, but you are set back to another position where it's like, well, I put all those resources into kind of getting that little board advantage. And you know what? They still have 1 in life. They still have Sabos on the board. They just have 1 more Gecko Moria. I think Caden's playing this great, but but Michael on this BY Luffy, he is putting on a clinic right now.
So, I mean, realistically, when it comes to what we're doing right here, you have to be able to assess the board and take it down to be able to go through multiple geckos. And the fact that the best that Cannon can do right now is attack, and if it goes, it goes. Michael is just being able to have free reign with the way his boards blow up. And then even though they've been getting, for the most part, handled, he's got 3 geckos. That card is easily one of the most overtuned cards in the game, and it is showing its power here in spades, making boards come out of nowhere. Just continuing this, keeping the Sabos up, the Rocket Luffys. This is what Gecko does in Black Yellow Luffy.
This seems to be a make or break turn for Caden because the pressure that Michael is showing with these geckos, like you said, Chris, is just too high. He's on a clock and he's like, what can I do? We do have 4 attacks. He only has 1 blocker and 1 life. They're all pretty big. Maybe he's just doing the math. 5 cards in hand. There is a line here, I think, for lethal.
You kind of just have to go for it, it feels like, if you're Caden right now. I mean, 0 life remaining. It's kind of feels do or die here. Your opponent is down to, it looks like, just 5 cards in hand. So there is that chance, I suppose, but...
When you see your opponent get rid of 2 non-counters the turn before using your Sabos, I think it's pretty safe to assume like they're holding at least, a couple of 2Ks, a couple of 1Ks.
And the fact that your opponent's leader is, overpowered too. And I'm not saying overpowered in like a game sense. I'm saying it's got power over its usual power, right? The 7Ks, the 9Ks. Suddenly that becomes a lot harder to swing into.
Well, the math is pretty much over at this point. He has 3 attacks left. Each of them needs to get over 9K just to even do anything. And on top of that, you already have a blocker on board. There's just not the math. He needs to hit twice. He's got 3 attacks. There's 1 blocker, and he still has cards in hand. So this is just, once you've seen that Sabo has come on and off the board, I think a total of 4, maybe 4 or 5 times. You just know his hand is full of gas when it comes to counter value. There's not bricks in that hand anymore. And it's just, you have to go for it if you're Caden, but it's got to feel bad knowing how many times you've seen non-counterable cards get pitched.
Yep, so there we see the 9 coming down. We get the automatic Fiori from Michael, just stopping this attack.
Yep, that's about that, right? I mean, you're not going to get in. I don't think you're going to get in at this point, but you got to go for it. You got to complete the cycle and see what you can do. Yeah.
Oh, we were holding on to 3 2Ks and a 5-card hand.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
4 2Ks and a 5-card hand. Michael was not losing to attacks this turn.
I mean, that was a well-crafted hand by Michael, and you know that's a hand like 3-4 turns in the making, right? And I mean, again, that's like just the skill we see from him on this deck. There's the attack coming in, 10K or however a million K from Gecko Moria, and that's
all the
it doesn't
Ks.
matter. That's the end of game number 1.
Yeah.
And Michael puts himself up 1 game to 0 over Caden, but this is best of 3, so we are not done yet.
Caden's like, oh, that first Moria, no worries, I can handle that just fine. Boom, Kaido. Oh, that second Moria, no worries, look at all my attacks. The third Moria, you're like, hold on, wait a second, I don't think I can win the game this turn. I think I just lost.
I don't know. I feel like that might have been the feeling after the second Moria. It's just rough because I'm just circling back to what I was saying before game 1 started. You really, as the Lucci player, do not want to see even one Sabo can be sometimes overbearing if there's a lot of geckos involved. If you can cycle the child Sabo in and out. But once you saw the 2 Sabos and then the gecko, that's just it's too much. The One Piece does not have a terrible amount of filter and draw, and that Sabo is turboing through the deck. You are finding all the best pieces of what you need. You're setting up your trash. You are finding those other geckos. Once a Sabo has been resolved 3 times, you just should know that the person probably has the hand that they wanted to sculpt, and you're about to face their best curve. You're about to face their best rollout of threats and defensive capability.
Yeah.
And when it came down to it, all Michael had in hand was gas.
Yeah, I mean, dude's got more geckos than insurance commercials, so what are you going to do? I mean, you go to game 2, you try to regroup, you try to come back, and it's not over yet. Remember, Michael himself, on stage earlier today, found himself 1 game down and was able to come back and swing it the other way. Caden has to be thinking the same thing right now. He's like, all right, it's happened on stage already today. It can happen again for me. Believe in the deck, believe in why you brought it, and we'll see what happens.
That's been the story of day 2. Games 2 and 3 have decided almost all of our important matchups today.
Yeah.
Let's see if it'll happen for One Piece as well.
I don't want to be the contrarian, but I think the main thing though is that a lot of these decks, yes, you're getting hampered, but it's not stopping you from playing. And I think that with Lucci, your main avenue of interaction is destruction, and you are being shut down by a singular card. So your deck, when you can't destroy anything, all the cards you have in your deck that specifically lower cost, they're lowering cost for no reason. So you don't just have dead destruction cards, you have dead other cards. And then at that point, all you can do is play bodies, dawn up, and attack, and then burn counter. And so it really does become a beyond uphill matchup. I'm still rooting for both players. I like to see good games. It's just that, mechanically, this is rough.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, you can turn into a leopard guy, so.
True.
That's cool, right?
We still have Rebecca. Rebecca's a house.
Oh, I'm not talking about Rob Lucci's drip. Rob Lucci's drip is immaculate.
I haven't gotten that far in the
everlasting.
series. Does she turn into an actual house? Or are you just talking about card quality?
Both.
Oh, wow. I would believe you. I would believe anything you told me about the future of the show.
What would that be classified as? An anti-spoiler or just like a lie? I don't know.
All I'm saying is that Rob Lucci is the only character that did not get any cooler looking in the time skip because he was already at maximum drip. His palette swapped.
He's
It
got
was
the
okay.
top hat. He's got the leopard print. What more do you need?
All right, so we're starting.
An air jump. And starting out with the Uda. As it looks like it was Michael going first here on the 3-down turn now. Caden electing to go second.
Yeah, Caden just wants all the cards he can for this matchup. Make sure he has the resources required. We saw the way he chooses to, favor building up the threats, kind of playing it a bit slower, not giving away life. Because the last thing you want to have happen is your opponent's at 0 life on their 10-down turn. They go full Gecko Moria combo plus 2 babies into a 9K. Whew, that can be pretty rough sometimes. If you're playing a slower deck classically like Rob Lucci.
Okay, so we're actually playing a Khalifa to just do some filtering. I honestly, without being able to see his hand, I don't know what that means. But normally, if I'm playing Khalifa's on curve, that is a check engine light. But he could just be trying to make sure he gets to where he needs to get to. It's hard to see without his hand.
And then we see the Kuzan in Michael's hand there. That was kind of nice for him earlier in the turns to get rid of Caden's Gecko Moria in the middle of the game. Could be cool to establish right now.
I mean, Kuzan in this list is just such a great, little early mid-game kind of filler card to be like, all right, I'm not quite online yet, but here's a threat you need to take seriously.
Oh, yes. And it gets instant value, too. Like, it's not one of those threats you have to, wait for. It just already replaces itself and then can just say, hey, opponent, deal with this. Oh, you didn't? Cool.
And right now we are looking right back at the other game we had where Caden has a singular turn to handle this Kuzan, or there is a chance he will never be able to touch the Kuzan with effects for the rest of this game.
We saw Mike and Michael hold the Dawn back, even though he has a 3 brothers in hand, it looks like. Might not want to risk putting down clutch cards to the bottom of the deck.
Every decision is a tough decision, I think, from Caden's side of things, because you just have to sort of have a game plan that's very different from the other game plans you have in the other matchups.
Oh, yes.
And you really have to believe in that game plan, too, because it gets a little bit unorthodox, you know?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to not using 3 brothers, I didn't quite see Michael's hand, but until you see your first Gecko, Gecko's live in 2 turns potentially. Until you see your first Gecko, I'm not comfortable top 5ing and bottom decking.
Ooh, Kingdom coming live, getting rid of the Uta. I believe it can get rid of any 4 cost or less, and Uta only protects from leader abilities, like you said, Eric.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's Uda, but it still hurts, right?
Yeah, especially because I believe that cost reduction might have been huge for Caden there, because it would have been making Kuzan a 2 cost versus a 3 cost right now, which means more cards in his deck could get rid of it.
Yeah.
But right now, it's either Kaku or nothing, plus maybe a combination of more cost reducers, but using that on a Kuzan feels pretty neg.
Fair enough. Caden kind of looking up to be like, okay, well now what?
I mean, it's kind of rough because there's a lot to think about. But if you can destroy this Kuzan, you have to destroy this Kuzan. And I guess this is gonna hurt. If he had to look up like that, maybe that's because he just didn't want to have to do what he was gonna do.
All right. Yep. The Rebecca. Okay.
Gonna add back the Brook and then play the Brook. Reduce it one more, going to 0, and then KOing it using Brook's effect.
He solved the puzzle. You got rid of the Kuzan. It was a roundabout way to do it, but you got it done.
Well, that's why he made the face. He had to get rid of a Suru.
Yeah.
But he knows he's about to lose his opportunity to touch that Kuzan.
You know, it's like, is that 2K going to be better as a 2K in that situation, or are you going to need the negative cost? And in that situation, the threat demanded that you use it as a negative cost. It doesn't feel it feels strange, but it's the right move for sure, I think.
I mean, without Kuzan on board,
welcome back.
He can keep his Jacks, his Kaidos, his Gecko Morias without Kuzan on board. If that Kuzan stays, then that's not possible anymore. But Michael just plays out another one because he's got it like that.
Hey, when you got the Kuzans, you got the Kuzans, right?
So there you see the 3 brothers coming down. He saved it from last turn. Going to be looking at the top 5 and get a baby Luffy added to his hand.
That is all.
I'm kind of wondering, I know that you have to fear Sabo stopping you from breaking the board, but that was a lot of investment on that Kuzan last turn. And it's like Michael's not going to turn on the gas quite yet at the life. He's just going to be doing some chip damage for now. But I'm just not sure if Kuzan warranted all of that.
Well, we saw earlier that it did get rid of one of Caden's most powerful attackers in the first game with that Gecko Moria, so maybe he's just kind of feeling the shell shock of that card ruined my aggression play.
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's, this is going to cost X amount of resources. When else in the game am I going to have those resources to pay for that type of thing, right?
Kind of like you mentioned, once the Sabos start coming down, then I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, I think it was either then or never, right? At least as far as this game is concerned.
But now Caden has an interesting question. Do I attack my opponent's life and get them closer to 0? Because I believe Michael will be going to 9 on his next turn. Being at 0 on your 9 down turn can be really cool depending on how many babies you have already in hand. There we see the attack with Lucci getting 2 more cards in the trash. Card added to life, marking the Kuzan with -1 cost.
And what else do we have? Gotta resolve that attack first.
Yeah, I think...
Unless we already did.
He looks composed, but I think Caden's probably thinking about the last turn and probably just regretting the fact that he did not anticipate the Kingdom Come from life.
Mm-hmm.
But Uta not being able to use her effect before she was evaporated.
Yeah, she's stronger if she's like repeatable turn after turn after
How
turn.
how can you, right? I mean, it's in there, but you just have to kind of go for it and just hope they don't have it. But
You have to respect
sometimes they have it, yeah.
But I know he's got to be thinking about that because using Uta before swinging.
Oh, that's a good point. No, you're
wouldn't have to
totally
use
right.
the Suru.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, I forgot that.
Set old set one jet pistol logic.
So there we see the Tempest Kit coming down. I believe we will not be able to reduce the cost because we don't have 10 cards in trash. 2, 3, 6, 9 exactly.
9. Ooh,
One more would have done it. And then the Brook would have been able to get rid of the Kusan. But here we see Jack coming down. That can also get rid of it now that it's a 3-cost card. Going to go ahead and draw a discard.
I really hope that he just that he intended to not get both effects and that wasn't a slight miscalculation under pressure. I really am.
Yeah, I mean, you have to assume in these situations that there's a reason for doing it, right? I mean, everybody makes misplays on every stage, but I think the best way to look at it is, why would you want to maybe do that? Is there a reason you would want to go up to that in the trash, right? If we can puzzle that out, then we might know, but I'm not sure.
So you're saying like use the Jack effect before you play Tempest Kit, Chris?
Oh no, I just was hoping it wasn't a miscount on the trash.
Oh, you're saying
yeah.
He's like, I have to play this. I don't want to play it if I don't have to. Because it's always good to get that cycle and add to the trash anyway to have the 10 before your turn starts next turn.
That's what I'm kind of thinking, yeah. It's not impossible. I think it's unlikely that you'd forget how many cards are in your trash.
It's like the way to efficiently use your Dawn during that turn, if that makes sense.
Right.
Is the way I think Caden's thinking about it. Because saving the Tempest Kicks might not be the best thing because, like you said, the Sabos are going to start flying, and so cost reduction kind of is now at a minimum.
I think that's fair. Well,
did we play a third Kusan as Michael, by the way? I was like, what the heck? Yeah, and then we played Sabo right after.
No,
you can see 2 in the trash. Yep.
Backed by Sabo.
First we had 3 Geckos, now we have 3 Kusans. Man, Michael just loves seeing these no counter cards in 3-ofs.
I mean, there's another couple Sabos, too.
And the trash is the best place for them to be. Oh, my goodness.
This is exactly what I was speaking about. The loop is in hand. Now, he doesn't have multiple Geckos, but he has 1 Gecko, and Sabo is going to get another resolution. He's going to see another 3 to 4 cards in the next turn. It's about to be rough.
But here we go. We're going to 10 Dawn as Kane. This could be a pretty threatening turn for him if he chooses to go to push Michael 2-0. Or if he chooses to hold back, maintain his board, kind of like we saw him doing in Game 1. Interesting to see what he's going to go for here.
It's a really tough decision. See, Caden's not one too happy about the position he's in right now.
It's like, if I'm him, do I even attack with Lucci here? My trash is kind of already full from the looks of it. It could get blocked by Sabo anyway, but I don't think Michael will do that because he wants the life cards in his hand to go to 0 quicker. We are going to get the swing here. We are going to get the Mill 2, going to get a Spandine and an Ice Age. Going to mark the Kusan for -1, so Jack would have been able to get rid of it, but can't anymore.
Yep. Sabo is protecting right now.
Not going to protect the life using Sabo, just going to go to 1, make it a little bit easier for him to combo off next turn. We saw Michael can do it from 3, so 1's not that much different for him.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the plays are in hand to not put Lucci at 6, but now we see Khalifa going in for a neutral.
I think it's better, because if he blocks the Lucci attack, he's like, cool, I don't want you to take more life anyway. But if he baits him into using it on a Khalifa attack, he can now attack the Sabo with a Jack and get rid of it. Or force cards out of hand.
I was like, if Lucci was 6, then the block on Sabo would have to demand a card as well, and then make it weaker for the impending attack on it. So I'm just kind of, I want to know what he's saving his Dawn for.
Yeah, the fear of maybe Michael taking it anyway, probably.
Yeah, looks like Brook going in as well.
I think it is worth noting that I believe Brook still could minus cost on attack, but he won't be able to KO anything, even if it was 0. But Mike Caden's like,
sending a message, all right?
Yeah. You're like, I don't need to use this effect. I'm good.
That's right. And takes it.
Takes it as Mike.
Okay.
Going to swing with the Jack, force the block from Sabo now. Do we throw all down on Suru and just attack? That'd be rad as hell.
That would be pretty sick.
Well,
but
I mean,
it'd be 8K. He's only 5K right now. That's some cards.
that could be a lot of cards. I don't know. That's wild, but I'm all for it.
Hey, I've seen wilder, man. I'll tell you that much.
Me too. It's not unheard of.
Boom! There it is.
He's going
8K with
for it.
Suru. Gonna take out the 2 Hioris. Going to 9K.
I think I'm 100% behind that.
That was awesome.
You know, when you're down in a series like that, you have that opportunity. I say swing for the fences,
You
man.
never know what plays are viable, right? Until the best players in the world show you.
As they said in the year like 2010 or something, YOLO.
Now hear me
That's
out.
right.
I know people don't want to use the card, but original Altart Rush Lucci. I'm just saying. I really.
A 4th Kuzan
Oh,
coming down
no.
for Michael.
Oh no.
Who's playing the removal black deck? Is it Michael or is it Caden?
I mean, look, we can talk about O-Nos, but I would rather see a 4th Kuzan than a 2nd Gecko.
I mean, that's a fair point. You're not wrong.
I even think Michael had Gecko in hand, just chose not to play it, actually.
I think it's because he's going to be able to get things back just on his own anyway. There's another
He can
Sabo
actually
from hand.
just
Yep.
cast.
He had no babies in the trash, so he's going to use them now to get rid of it, and then having Kuzan as the backup to your big 2-life baby play is going to be worth it. But I think it's worth noting here that I'm pretty sure Michael won't be able to go back up to 2-life, and with only 1 blocker and all these attacks on Caden's side, there is a world where he can actually pressure through.
This is
That Suru attack might have mattered in terms of eating up Michael's hand size, guys.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, that's why you're kind of all for it. I mean, like, what do you have to lose, right? You're going to pull some cards out.
Are we actually going to see a game 3 here?
I think we might.
Like, this
I think
Jack is already threatening at least 1 card out of Michael's hand, which I believe is 6 cards at the moment.
Hey.
Only 1 blocker, but we have, in theory, 4 viable attackers.
We know that at least 2 cards in Michael's hand, too, are non-counter with those Morias, right? So, you know, I think I'd be sweating a little bit if I'm Michael. You know, without knowing exactly what's in his hand, this might be Caden's best opportunity to force a game 3.
I mean, there's a world where putting 3 Dawn on Jack swinging 11 and then putting 7 Dawn on Lucci swinging 12 might just do it for him because Michael only has 1 life. And whenever it comes to 1 life going for game math, it's way simpler than anything else. And Caden might not get a better chance because after this turn, like Chris and I have been saying all of us have been saying all round long, the looping potential of Michael just to get the resources he needs to keep being a 9K with like 1 to 2 life every single turn is going to be easier the longer the game goes on.
Yeah, the Gecko is definitely coming down next turn, right? So it feels like now or never.
So here we swing 10, I believe, with the Jack here, but there we get just the random 2K. That's the 3rd one I believe we've seen from Michael this game.
Oh, okay, and then is it going to go all on Rob Lucci here?
No, I think he's just swinging
just
for the
a
5 here.
5K and then
Just the mill.
Yep. And then where is the Dawn going to go?
I'm very interested.
He's got he's still got the Sabo there.
gonna
of
go.
course. Yeah.
Michael's like, how strong is it? He's like, it doesn't hit you. He's like, oh, okay. There we see the Gecko Mori coming down from
Okay.
Caden is trying to maybe establish his own board here because maybe he's thinking a situation like this might happen again on the next turn.
I mean, it is a lot of attacks, right? I mean, you still have a very solid board built up here. Oh, go ahead.
I was like, this is just like, it's one of the things that makes black, yellow Luffy so formidable and sometimes just feel like almost insurmountable. There are so many plays that could have happened this turn, but the fact that after those plays, you still have to try to swing over a 9K leader shuts you out on so many levels.
Right. Like we said in game number 1, that's where it gets really untenable. Not only are you building these really tough to get past boards, but the leader itself is kind of in that same category where it's hard to get through.
So there we see the add back of a Khalifa to the hand using the Rebecca's ability, and now we're playing out the Spandine from hand, adding a Rob Lucci. Unfortunately, no counter there, getting rid of a Jack and a Suru. Sorry, no, a Kaido and a Suru, I think.
Yeah, spanned him. Doing a bit of searching there.
So there we see the first Kuzan, and once again, unfortunately, I think that means this Gecko Moria is not long for this world because we do have Rocket Luffy in play.
Yep. And you only need 1 Kuzan. You could reduce that Gecko Moria to 0 cost if you wanted to.
Michael shows us the really cool tech of Brook that he plays in his deck. That'd be wild.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't play it, though.
I mean, I feel like I saw Brooks in like early Black Yellow list once in a while, but not for a while.
They're like, let's put the best black card in the BY deck. Why not?
Who knew?
He's like, these guys, they're not attacking.
No.
We'll put them over here. He's like, let's just double check our trash.
Strong
here.
organization skills.
Yep, we have our babies. We have our ads back to life. Let's go for the Gecko Moria number 1.
Okay, at this point, the World Championship trophy just needs to be a statue of Gecko Moria. Like, this is just...
It's tall and thin. You could kind of paint it wider at the bottom. Yeah. So Sabo, Luffy, boys come out, and there are the men. The 5-cost Sabo and the 5-cost Luffy.
There we see Sabo bringing out Sabo, getting the protection effect that's been super clutch for Michael this entire round.
Yeah. 2 blockers with the leader at 9K. This is not a surmountable board by Lucci. Like, he would need double the Dawn this turn to make anything they could. This is just one of those points where Michael knows that he's closing the gate for any chances. I mean, it was known kind of a few turns ago, but this is just, it's presented now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the clock has been established for Caden. He's like, next turn, it's over for you, my friend.
All right, so how in the world do you get through this as Caden?
Table flip.
Maybe that's a heavy table.
It depends. Has anyone been watching the game? Could we just start over, do you think, and no one would notice?
Sure, shuffle up. No, I think it's going to be very difficult. I mean, look at the resources on the board. You've got the attack with King coming in, right? You're just trying to force those Sabos off the table, and Michael's going to be all too happy to give him at least one.
I think the writing is just on the wall.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. There was a nice little glimmer of hope the turn before, but I think, unfortunately, Caden had the read that Michael had too many cards in hand anyway, no matter what. I can't go for game now, and I believe he was right. If I did my math earlier, I think Michael had access to 14,000 worth of counter already in hand.
Oh,
so
sure.
He either stops the jack attack and makes the going for game impossible, or he takes it, baits him to go for the full commit, and then stops him anyway.
Yeah, so Caden just reviewing everything, making sure there's nothing that he's missed here.
Yeah, crucially, not having access to Kaido, it looks like this match has been really hurtful for him to kind of stymie some of this aggression that Michael is representing. But, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does have access to it.
Well, I mean, the Kaido can give you a little bit of a glimmer of hope sometimes.
Yeah, the Tempest kick into playing that down could be pretty cool. This could be the surprise Brook. No, it's just a Rebecca.
Yep. The least surprising card to see in a mono black deck, yeah.
Very, very standard.
Yep. But
just debating what we're going to add back to trash and maybe debate on what we can play back from our hand. Going to get back to Spandine.
Okay.
And play it as well. And then use the Spandine's effect to go ahead and put back some CP9 cards. Again, get that cycling that this deck is known for doing.
That's right, more Tempest kicks being thrown back there again. And is there a way to deal with this Sabo and then get another attack through it? Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, only 5 down back. The highest we can go for is a 9K with
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's easily countered out of. So how do you survive the next turn? You know, that's what the setup kind of has to be about this time.
Well, I mean, when it comes to what he's got in hand, right? Rocket Luffy's on the board, so Rocket Luffy will be able to take out Rebecca if need be. On top of that, you know, Kuzan's just going to go for chip. Gecko Mori is a huge body. The Luffy himself will be a huge body.
Okay.
How about
Rebecca.
2 Rebeccas?
Yeah.
This is definitely a much better position for Caden, but this is right now stalling. I still need to see how Caden's going to attempt to pull this back, and we are once again like one more Gecko Mori away from this board just being just as bad, or he could at this point just have 2 kids.
There's a big difference between stemming the bleeding and winning the game for sure.
Yeah. But, you know, until you have that path, that sure path to victory, you have to just try to delay. You have to try to stretch things out and, you know, hope your opponent sometimes you just have to hope your opponent makes a mistake too, you know, at the end of the day. And while that's unlikely with these 2 players, obviously, it's not, you know, nothing is impossible, right? It's not over till it's over.
But yeah, like this is sort of like a repeat of what we were seeing a lot of back in the OPO7 and OPO8 meta of this Lucci trying to figure out how can I keep up with Luffy's grind game in the late game. Yeah. The way I do that is by KOing cards, and I can't do that because of these Sabos.
Yeah, you really can't, yeah.
It's a 2-part combo, pockets and table flip. That's where it needs to go now. Realistically, I'm trying to think of how he even... Like, I'm trying to be optimistic. I am trying to be optimistic.
He's maximizing his card draw. He's maximizing the best cards he could have in his hand, going for these Khalifa and Spandine combo plays. Like, he's doing his darndest to make sure he's like, I can at least survive next turn. But, I mean, Michael can just go swing Rocket Luffy, bait one of the blocks, and then KO the other one, or just force the attack through and get a -1 in his hand and still get rid of one of the blockers.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.
I guess my thing is,
Here we go.
know your deck list, right? You know your deck list. Does Caden actually believe he has anything in his 50 that can turn this around, or is he playing because this is potentially the last game
I mean, it's the national finals. Yeah, you're not gonna scoop, right? You're gonna play it out, and that's what Caden's doing right now. And props to him for playing it through. That's what you got to do, right? And again, it's not over till it's over. It's not looking good as Michael sends that chip attack. There's one Rebecca gone from the Rocket Luffy. Now the question is, can we cleanly deal with the other Rebecca here? Looks like it should be a big problem. Counting up the Don. This is the part where I always get stuck. Math. It's math.
Yeah, I think Michael is in the realm where he's like, okay, I think I have the number of attacks here, but will it be too much of an overcommit when I can just like summon another Gecko Mori, have 11 plus 9, force him down to 0 life, no blockers, and then just win the game on the next turn? Is maybe the debate he's going for in his head. And as we saw previously, Michael is no shyer from just going, you know what, I'm okay with winning next turn. I feel like even if I give you one more, I'm still more than established enough to still clutch it out. But if he wants to pop the clutch, he might do so.
Doing the math, double checking the facts, making sure everything is ready to go.
It's like, what's better, hard playing the babies, gain the life, and then committing the rest of the Dawn to my attackers, or just playing the Gecko Moria and going for it anyway? I think is the debate in his head.
Yeah, that's right. Checking the discard pile one more time. So the last thing you want to do is get a little bit ahead of yourself in a one-game situation.
Counting the 2Ks here, being like, how much counter is it possible for Kane to have in his 5-card hand?
Has he deduced correctly?
He's holding 6 Dawn in his hand. I think he's going to go for it. Go for it. Going to be discarding with Luffy's ability here, the Gecko Moria that he could have played to get the 2 life there, probably just to insulate himself in case this maybe goes wrong.
Fair enough. All right. And why not? Just do your due diligence, I think. Build the strongest board you can.
Yeah, get the blocker out of the way.
Get rid of the other Rebecca. Yep. We knew that was coming at some point during the turn.
I mean, he has so much gas in hand.
Yeah, he's decided that even if I do commit to using the double babies and the rest of my Dawn, I can still survive thanks to my Sabo plus leader ability to go to 9K.
Yeah, and you know what? This is what got Michael here. This is what got Michael to the grand finals. This is slow, methodical play. We saw it earlier in the day. Took his time, made the right moves, got himself the win from a 0-1 to 2-1 win situation. And now, in what could be potentially the last turn of the North American finals, you can't expect anything else but calm and poise,
the life
steady
is taken
management to the deck from Michael Momofa. And it's almost time. The attack comes through.
15K with leader.
Done.
That's a lot. That is a lot of counter required.
And Kane scoops it up.
That's right. Michael Momofa is your North American one-piece champion. He does it on Black Yellow Luffy, a deck that, at the beginning of the weekend, some of us were saying, hey, have people forgotten about it? Well, guess what? Michael didn't forget about it. He took it all the way to the top, and he's going to take it all the way to Worlds. Or at least he's going to get himself.